Welcome, sleepless spirit. I'm your storyteller tonight, here to guide you gently into the shadows of slumber, where dreams take over and worries fade away. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more bedtime tales, whispered just for you. Let me know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from, and what time is it as you listen tonight? And if there's a story you've been longing to hear, something spooky, something comforting, tell me. I'm always listening. Now, tuck yourself in. Let the darkness wrap around you like a warm blanket. It's time to let go and drift into the story. When I first saw him, it was a quiet night. I saw movement cutting diagonally between the rows across the pattern rather than along it, as I stood atop a hay bale to count groups coming in. That was never how our paths crossed. The layout of the maze was symmetrical, no diagonals, no shortcuts. However, this individual walked with assurance, as if they were familiar with a secret path. I asked the child who was handling the bracelets, "You see that?" He narrowed his eyes. "Where?" "There, by station 2, cutting straight through." He sighed. "Ed is most likely checking the irrigation." Ed, however, didn't walk that way. Ed sagged. It glided. Before I could continue, laughing and clamour engulfed the figure, which disappeared back into the corn. I ignored it that evening. Depth is messed up in the maze. The lights flicker, sounds reverberate. It's easy to imagine someone in a place with no people. Nevertheless, I drove home uneasily after my shift. I kept seeing the beautiful lines, the design on the printed maze map. No diagonal was present. The following night began in the same manner. Radios, children laughing, and wind in the stalks chirping with the talk of lost and found. I spotted him again at 9 o'clock, when the last of the sunlight was fading, tall, silent, and observing the same shape. One of our paths was not being followed by him. He stood between them. I inquired over the radio, "Is there anyone patrolling the west side?" Voices after static. "Cider stand is where I am." Parking lot. "Hello." Nobody. He was once more standing at the emergency gate, head cocked slightly toward the maze, motionless as a scarecrow, as I glanced over the exit line. "Mister," I called, "wristband, please." Instead of using the exit, he walked back into the field through the wall of corn after raising his hand halfway and dropping it. Then something clicked. It wasn't a visitor. I was the only one who spotted him coming in from the outside. I got to work testing it. During pauses, I observed various exits, and each time he returned, he was in a different location. One time at the bridge, another by the food trailer. He glided in and out like he had hidden access, never staying. I drove the ATV on the dirt ridge we used for staff patrols, the outer berm, the following evening. The landscape divided into glinting gold and creeping gloom as my headlamp swept over it. I noticed a little opening through the stalks halfway down the west side, which ran parallel to the maze trail as if someone had carved out a private passageway. The leaves were neatly twisted and trampled, and had new boot prints at the base. I said into my radio, "Copy. Got a quarter cut on the west side." "It's definitely not natural. Hold on," said Mr. K calmly. After turning off the ATV, I listened. The night grew quiet. Then, very faintly, a single step, not in that secret route outside, not in the maze. I switched on my headlight once again. Just corn. The prints had a clean, sharp appearance. Minutes before, he had been there. Finally, Mr. K ordered, "Shut it down. The lights are on. Everyone is out." The sparkles in the blood throbbed. Families filed out, moaning. I looked at all the departing faces, hoping to see the man's. He blended in nicely. If he was, I heard it again as the crowd dwindled. A heavy, swift step right past the lights. Then there was quiet. That's all. Just one sound that wasn't supposed to be there. We couldn't find anyone. I took the west trail early the following morning. The private passageway was still visible, and a piece of rope had been tied at waist height across the path. At one of the blind corners, I chopped it down like a snare, stood there looking at it, and knew that whatever it was wasn't attempting to frighten anyone. They had a plan. We convinced ourselves that it was a joke. We were aware that it wasn't. The farm then introduced new regulations. Each patrol has 2 members and headcams. Nobody went into the maze by themselves. Every night felt a bit different, though, somehow quieter, as if the land were waiting. From within, Ross radioed me 3 nights later. West Side tearing sounds are being heard at Station 5. Copy, I said. Already on the way to the berm, like someone pulling a stick along the stalks, the sound came and went. I turned off my light to listen when I got to the ridge. The rhythm of the wind mirrored the beat of my heart. The corn then moved 3 rows in front of me. It was too low to be a deer, and too equally distributed to be wind. I noticed the smallest. Movement rippled between stalks when I raised my lamp. The trail trembled like someone fleeing quickly down that secret lane. But there was no figure. I blew our shut-down signal 3 times using my whistle. The radios crackled, and every guest froze. Mr. K's voice could be heard. Every employee leads the way out. The trail was deserted once more by the time backup got to me. The Fresh Prince, however, related the same tale. He had been there himself. We phoned the sheriff, issued ticket refunds, and closed early. A deputy arrived, made notes, and instructed us to stay vigilant. Unless he grabs someone, there isn't much we can do in that small town. There were no sightings 4 days. I then came early on Wednesday morning to inspect the berm before it opened. The corn was tall enough to shade the sun from it. As I took a stride forward, my shin was caught by something. One more line of twine. He had been outside the maze, walking where only we did, as shown by the fact that this one tied between the fence posts on the staff side. I untied the string, radioed it in, and put it in my pocket. For the first time, I observed how motionless everything was. There was only the low creak of the metal gate behind me, no wind, no insects. I lingered there longer than necessary, trying not to glance over my shoulder, while feigning to check the fence. I volunteered for BM patrol that night. Radio, headlamp, whistle, and basic tools. Initially, all I could hear was spotlights, families, the sound of corn touching clothes, and laughing coming from the maze. However, that laughter subsided after 9 o'clock. Groups passed, and for a while, the only thing left was the sound of the wind on the corn. Then there were 2 gentle taps, like a boot too impatiently touching the soil. I muttered, West Berm, potential movement close to Station 5. Ross replied, holding company. Do you want me to make sure? No. Remain in place. I squatted down and pointed my lamp across the ridge. The corn closest to me bowed a little, a soft bow and bounce as though a shoulder brushed against it. I sensed someone was there even though I couldn't see a figure. I started the ATV using the same secret passageway as before, not to pursue, but to create noise and let whatever was out there know I wasn't alone. After a few seconds, the leaves fell silent once more as the noise from the machine filled the darkness. That night, we didn't catch anyone. We wouldn't. The maze returned to normal over the weekend. As the season progressed near Halloween, families arrived, children yelled. I couldn't break the habit of looking around corners, though, even when nothing happened. You no longer trust maps after you see movement against them. Early in November, we had our last cleanup day. Now brittle, the maze had partially collapsed due to the frost, in part for closure, and in part because I couldn't resist. I took one final walk around the berm. The land was still delineated by the private corridor, a pale scar where the stalks were no longer able to stand. I went to the fence line after it. The tree and ditch beyond it provided ideal protection for a person tall enough to go undetected. It occurred to me as I stood there how simple it would have been for him to observe everything from that dark opening. I still ponder about that 4 years later. Every year, the maze is open, safer now, patrols, cameras, and additional lights. Sometimes they give me a call to consult, I instruct them on what to search for. Clean corn breaks, rope knots waist high, and parallel other than crossing routes. It's commonly believed that dread results from not knowing where you are. However, I learned from working there that the true fear is when you know that someone else is waiting for you to round that corner and knows exactly where you'll be. We convinced ourselves that it was a joke. We were aware that it wasn't. Checks around the edges are important. Their map is not yours. Music. 4 months. I had been working from home, engrossed in microwave dinners and spreadsheets. It seemed like a simple fix when I discovered a home swap software that allowed users to switch places for the weekend. Real homes and real people. No crowds, no hotels. I met Kurt and Dana that way. Their Smoky Mountains cabin appeared to be ideal. Views of the forest, a wooden terrace, and pleasant light coming in through the windows. We're heading into town this weekend. It's all yours. Enjoy the quiet, they wrote. And they appeared just like everyone else. Positive reviews and verified profiles. I left early on Friday after exchanging my Nashville flat with him for tonight's. I smelled the pine smoke, wet leaves, and the scent of fall when I finally turned down the gravel lane. Ahead, the cabin looked much like the pictures. Cozy, peaceful, and hospitable. There was only one strange feeling. They had left their SUV parked by the porch. The place was cozy inside. It's too hot, wet at the sleeves, to coats hung beside the door. There were still flecks of tomato sauce in a skillet on the stove, and a half-full mug rested on the coffee table. According to the house, they left an hour ago, but they informed me otherwise. "Hello," I called. Nothing. I expected to see someone packing as I made my way around the rooms. The mirror in the washroom was foggy. On the floor lay a tangled towel. I reminded myself that they had departed quickly. Perhaps they neglected to clean. The 3 dots emerged and then disappeared as I texted them. "Hey, just arrived. Place looks great. Thanks again." No response. I tried not to ponder too much while I unpacked a few items. Then there was a thump from the floor's underside. A basement was stated in the listing. I located the tiny door, which was secured with a basic latch, next to the kitchen stairs. I knelt down to listen. There was only a slight hissing sound coming from the vent, similar to air passing through pipes. From the opposite side, there's another sound, a gentle click like metal on wood. Half laughing to myself, I retreated. Noisy new cabin, old cabin. But in the back of your mind, something wasn't right. The floor creaked under me every few minutes. So I turned on the TV just for background noise. Step 1, pause. Step 2. It was the expansion of the heating ducts. I told myself. The coffee table's tablets then began to buzz. The living room thermostat was set at 73. Strange. It was untouchable by me. When I reached for it, a smart home control screen appeared. The main floor and basement thermostats arrived, with a setting of 68. The basement one was operational. I gave it a tap. I was locked out of the app and prompted for a password. At that moment, I saw a dim red light emanating from the bookcase. A tiny, inconspicuous camera, similar to the lenses of those baby monitors. Once more, the iPad pings. The camera had just been remotely accessed. I lifted it and held it up to the wall. Kurt then sent a text message. There was no response when I said, "Hey, everything okay?" "Yeah, but did you forget to turn off your camera system?" Another thump came from underneath 10 minutes later. This time, louder. Staring at the basement entrance, I remained still. I sent another text. "You guys sure you left? Sounds like someone's still downstairs." No response. Using the Home Swap app, I dialed hotline. The rep had a serene tone. "Go outside and contact the local authorities if you feel unsafe." After hanging up, I went to get my stuff. I was only being courteous. I wasn't panicking. I heard the sound of a muffled creak. I turned to face the front door. The latch in the basement shifted, just enough to produce the little noise that doors make when the pressure on the opposite side shifts. I hurried down the stairs and out the door. In my hand, my keys were trembling. There was silence in the jungle. The mist had grown heavier. I opened the car door and tossed my stuff inside. My phone then buzzed once more. Kurt texted again. It's all right. The basement shouldn't be a concern. This time, there is no punctuation, no grin, only those words. I didn't respond to the text. I put the car in reverse and started it. The porch was swept by the headlights. I noticed the door at that moment, wide open, and a barefooted man eyeing me from halfway up the steps. The light made it difficult for me to see his face, only the tall, rigid shape of him. Hurrying down the road, I threw the gear change into drive. I almost dropped the phone when attempting to call 911, since my hands were shaking so much, but the signal vanished once more. The valley has no service. I pulled into a diner with a neon sign after driving by it. My first sensible idea was to give the sheriff a call. 20 minutes later, I was welcomed there by two deputies. I described everything: the individuals, the camera, the text, and the open door. They exchanged glances that I was unable to read. One person said, "We'll go up and see. If you'd like, you can follow us." Despite my instincts telling me not to, I did. When we arrived, the cabin appeared serene. No one is inside, and the porch light is on. After knocking and introducing themselves, the deputies opened the door. We felt the warmth first. Now everything was clean, yet still that same trapped heat. No coats, no mugs, no stovetop skillet, and no fog in the restroom. The basement door was shut and secured once more. With flashlights in hand, the deputies fell. I stared at the empty coffee table where the iPad had been while I waited upstairs. One of them re-entered the room and said, "There's a bed down there made up. Looks like someone's been living here." But no one's around. Headlights rushed across the porch before I could respond. The same silver SUV that I had noticed upon arrival came in. As composed as ever, Kurt and Dana smiled as they headed outside. We were very perplexed. The woman remarked as she approached us, "Oh, thank God. She arrived before we had completed our departure." The deputies asked for clarification. She explained cheerfully that there'd been a mix-up. They'd forgotten a few things before heading out and were just coming back to grab them. I said, "You told me you'd left hours ago. It must have been autocorrect, you know." She chuckled as if I were exaggerating. "Seems like a miscommunication," one of the policemen stated, looking between us as her spouse simply stood there with his hands behind his back. No harm done. They took a quick statement, told me to stay elsewhere for the night, and left. When I turned to leave, something on the table caught my eye. A folded note. "Sorry for the trouble. Don't bring up the basement, please." After shoving it into my pocket and heading out without turning around, I booked into a motel along the highway and remained up until the sun came up, not sleeping. I couldn't, so I filed a report through the app in the morning, attached screenshots of the texts, and explained everything. The representative promised an investigation, but 2 days later, the listing was gone. Kurt and Dana were nowhere to be found, and their profile picture messages were erased. A week later, I received an email from the app saying that they were sorry for the inconvenience and that I would get my credits back, but that was it. I began to question whether the cabin was actually theirs, and 2 months later, I received a promotional email from the app saying, "Find your next getaway." I clicked out of habit and saw that it was posted under new names, Kelsey and Mark, but the cabin, images, and yellow glow through the windows were all the same. I flagged it again, and a day later, the ad disappeared. I called the app in a rage, and the support agent just stated, "Thank you for bringing it to our attention." No answers, just a corporate tone that didn't care what I'd seen. Sometimes when I replay that weekend, I wonder what would have happened if I'd gone down those stairs, if I'd ignored that feeling and opened the basement door, because the more I think about it, the less I believe it was a misunderstanding. It's been 3 years, and now when friends boast about cheap weekend swaps or cozy errands, I smile and tell them to make sure the owners actually left, because sometimes people don't move out. They just moved. I spent most of that fall hiking alone. It started as an escape from a cramped apartment, a way to feel something other than recycled air. Every overlook felt like a prize at the end of a long week. The timing, The text delays, the heat still. Running in the basement, all of it felt practiced, as if they had done it before. A few pictures, and a drive home in the orange light. That Saturday was one of those ideal mid-October days, when the Shenandoah Valley looks amazing, with reds and golds blending together and air cool enough to wake you up without hurting. I had already visited two trails, and was on my way to one last overlook before returning home. But when I pulled in, the area was deserted, with a low stone wall running along the edge, mossy and cracked, and a sign warning not to feed wildlife. I parked, got my little tripod, and clipped my phone into it, timer on. 3 beeps, snap. I wasn't doing anything fancy, just taking a picture. A dark blue 4-door sedan slid slowly off the main road, parked a spaces away, headlights off, and the driver didn't get out. At first, nothing about it shouted danger, people stop at overlooks all the time, but something about the way they parked, nose toward the road, angle sharp for a fast exit, stuck in my head. I looked back down at my phone screen and caught the faint reflection of the car behind me, slouched low, barely visible. When I turned around to check, they sat up straight again. I kept taking pictures, pretending not to notice. The valley looked beautiful in the late light, with clouds stretching like thin ribbons, but I was unable to concentrate on the view any longer. The sedan rolled forward a few feet when I bent to adjust the tripod, and I heard a soft, creeping crunch of gravel. I turned to face it directly, and the driver froze. I held up my phone again, feigning to line up another shot, and I saw that the driver's seat was empty in the reflection, but I hadn't heard a door open, and the car hadn't moved. I believe that's when my body realized what my mind wouldn't admit. I told myself it was nothing, that I was overthinking, but the longer I stood there, the more weird it felt. Whoever was in that car was timing their movements to mine. I decided to pack up and leave. Walking straight to the driver's side meant passing the space between us. Instead, I circled wide, keeping my car between me and that person. I tried to look casual, like someone wrapping up a photo session. The sedan rolled forward again, closing part of the gap. I unlocked my car, got in on the passenger side, and slid across the seat to the driver's side. My heart was hammering, but my hands moved like they knew what to do. I started the engine and locked the doors. The sedan idled. I sent a location, pinned to my friend Leave, and quickly typed scenic overlook as it moved forward till its front bumper nearly touched my rear one, obstructing me. Behind me is a strange automobile. The lights are off, refuses to go. Call me now, she replied almost immediately. Before I could respond, I sounded my horn, sending a single, long booming note down the mountainside. The driver lurched upright, startled, and then remained motionless once more. The horn remained pressed until my arm ached. Leave texted the ranger station once again. A few bends down, I saw a ranger cruiser parked on the shoulder. Relief hit me so hard I nearly laughed. I pulled in behind him, hazards on, still shaking. The sedan edged closer, then turned its front wheels left, trying to angle across the center line like it wanted to trap me in the pull-off. That was it. I floored it. My car lurched forward, cutting across the narrow space in front of the sedan before it could move fully into the lane in the mirror. The ranger parked sideways, blocking the exit, and he calmly got out with his hand hovering near his belt. "Sir," he said. "There's a car up the road," I blurted. A blue sedan with lights off, and someone watching me tried to block me in. He wasted no time in flipping on his roof lights and signaling for me to follow. We turned around and headed back up the mountain. The overlook showed up again, the tire marks on my car still visible. The ranger parked sideways, blocking the exit. "Please roll down your window," he said it more loudly. Nothing. And then the glass burst halfway down. The ranger's tone remained neutral. "This area closes at dusk. Mind explaining why you're sitting here with your lights off?" The driver, a man in his late 30s, said, his eyes obscured by glare. "Since I don't want to ruin anyone's pictures," he said, smiling. License and registration. The driver handed over the license. He said it was in the trunk when the ranger asked him for his registration. "Stay where you are," he said, circling around. He tapped at the license plate, and the numbers were warped by a dark tinted cover. "It's illegal," he said. "You'll need to remove this," he said. The driver didn't move or argue, just looked straight ahead as if the conversation didn't involve him. The ranger read the plate from an angle, noted it, and said, "Let's go. Now you're going out of the park." The ranger returned to me after the man nodded, turned on the ignition, and drove away slowly as though nothing had happened. "You did the right thing," he said, adding that the plate is unreadable by cameras from that cover. "A report will be filed." "Maybe nothing," he sighed when I asked what it meant. "It might be someone who avoids tolls. It might be worse. You made the right decision by staying out." He advised me to stop by the station if I wanted to make a written statement, but it was not necessary. "Next time, if someone follows you with lights off, drive straight to a public stop. Don't wait to see what they want," he urged. I followed him down the mountain until we arrived at a more populated location. My phone buzzed with messages from Leave. The ranger called me. "Are you safe? What happened? Do you need me to drive out?" I texted back, "All right now. Just creeped out. Heading home soon." I nodded. Was it just me? Did he seem like he'd done that before? The ranger didn't answer. "Drive safely," he said, and left it at that. Later, I pulled into a crowded lookout near a gift shop and the row of parked RVs. I had always told myself that the world was generally good, and that solo hiking just meant being aware and careful, but it finally hit me how small that overlook really was. One open patch of road, no cameras, no signal, and one stranger's decision away from something worse. 2 days later, the ranger emailed me a brief report. Vehicle identified, local address verified, no outstanding warrants. I read that line repeatedly, as if it meant safe. I continued to look at every car that passed 4 hours afterward, and I kept replaying the fact that he only moved when I wasn't looking. I returned to work on Monday and sat at my desk, looking through the photos from that day. The unnoticed shots looked lovely: golden leaves, a clear sky, the faint haze of the valley below, but in 2 of them, I could see the blurred outline of that sedan, parked so far back that the windshield appeared black. All the other pictures from that fall were serene, but those 2 just felt strange. I haven't deleted them, but I've never shown them to anyone. Now, whenever friends mention going on a solitary trip or finding a quiet place to take pictures, I tell them to leave if a car pulls in with its lights off. Don't be courteous. Don't wait to confirm your instinct. Scenic is better with a witness. It began as an innocent invitation. He was in my American Lit seminar. He was quiet, thoughtful, and one of those people who rarely spoke but always said something worth remembering. When he mentioned his family's lake house in the Adirondacks and said, "I should come up to see the colors," it sounded harmless, because up there, under all that beauty, one stranger can turn silence into something else entirely. Only a few times after class had we discussed favorite authors and midterms. The invitation had an air of maturity, reminiscent of the sort of weekend that movie characters had before their lives became complicated. That wasn't a date, I told myself. Before the weather changed, there were only 2 classmates enjoying fall. It was a lovely drive up. It felt like the semester was coming to an end as we traveled farther into the mountains. Even though my GPS signal fluctuated, I managed to locate the small dirt road that was bordered by maple and birch trees. Earlier, he texted, "I'm running late. Make yourself at home." Class ran over. The cabin was picture perfect. There is a little pier at the water's edge, green trim, and cedar siding. A fog hung over the lake. I briefly believed that I had actually entered a postcard. They had unlocked the front door. I saw that the front door was ajar when I approached it, just enough to prevent it from latching. "Hello," I phoned. No answer. I forced it open, thinking that perhaps a maintenance worker or cleaning service would be wrapping up. I stopped at the doorway instead because of what I saw. From the sliding glass doors to the hallway, bare feet left damp footprints on the floor of the living room. The water still gleamed on the boards. Eli, I rang once again. Nothing has changed. Sweat and old beer filled the house. There was a lit lamp in the corner. Somewhere in the house, there was music. All the hairs on my arms stood up. Slowly, my sneakers squeaking on the damp wood, I entered. I only intended to contact Eli, check the main room, and then rush back to my car. The dishes, both used, were spread out on the dinner table. Crumbs, orcs, an open half of the wine bottle is gone. It had been visited recently. In an attempt to text him, I took out my phone. Hey, are you certain the house is empty? The lights were on, and the door was open. A noise from the corridor interrupted me before I could press send. A wet heel slipping on wood is an example. Then slow, bare footsteps. I stood frozen in place. A man appeared on the scene. He wasn't Eli. I didn't recognize him at all. He had no clothes on. His hair was hanging loosely. His pupils were blown wide as if he hadn't slept in days, and mud was streaking up his legs. Like a cornered animal, his chest rose and fell quickly and shallowly. We both just gazed for a moment. "Who are you?" I shouted as he took a stride toward me and smiled. A twitchy, unnatural stretch of his mouth. He gave me a non-comprehensive look before charging directly at me. As the wet prints came down the corridor behind me, I screamed and sprinted for the door, almost tripping him. His feet slammed loudly, quickly, and unevenly against the board. He genuinely chuckled. With my heart pounding so fiercely that I was having trouble breathing, I rushed outside and staggered down the stairs to my car. I pushed the door open with trembling hands and jumped inside, shutting it behind me. A second later, his face was splattered against the glass. His eyes were wild, and he had drool on his chin. He began pounding both fists at the window, while yelling something I couldn't understand. He had such light skin that it seemed to sparkle. I reached for the keys, let them drop, then picked them up again. My brain simply ceased functioning. The vehicle refused to start. Sweat had made my hands slippery. The key continued to elude the slot. He pounded more forcefully. Every strike echoes throughout the entire frame. He never tested the moniker for some reason. Simply continued to slam the apartment of smearing dirt and water on the glass with his hands. As I repeatedly jammed the key, I flattened myself against the driver's seat, trembling and muttering, "Please, please, please," thinking, if he figures it out, if he touches that handle, I'm dead. The engine roared to life at last. I almost hit the porch railing as I threw it in reverse. He let out a high-pitched, almost happy scream and leapt back. I floored it after shifting to drive. I briefly caught a glimpse of him in the rearview mirror, still nude and beaming, chasing until the trees engulfed him. I continued, not for my phone beeping, not for stop signs, nothing. I saw a wooden sign after miles of the road winding downhill. Ranger station no. 2 meters. My tires squealed as I turned in so quickly. When I pulled up, a truck was chatting to 2 rangers outside. I was still trembling so much that I could hardly speak. The lake house is occupied by a man. He's nude. He came after me. I let out a gasp. Which property? I gave them the address on my phone. Immediately, one of them recognized it. That's Dwyer from the past. He grabbed his coat and whispered, "Cabin. We've had trouble there before." They told me to wait inside while they drove out. I sat in the small wooden lobby, still wearing my mud-splattered sneakers, hugging myself and staring at the reflection of the dark trees through the window. Every time I blinked, I saw his face again, pressed against the glass. About 40 minutes later, the older ranger leaned down next to me. He's not there now, but we found clothes, empty bottles, and drug paraphernalia. It looks like someone has been squatting. You said you were invited. I nodded feebly and showed them Eli's texts. "Let's settle this," the younger one said. So I did. Eli sounded happy when he picked up. "Hey, you made it there already." "Eli," I said in a trembling voice, "there's someone in your house. There's someone in your house." "No, no one's there. My cousin sometimes helps out." "Wait," he said quietly. "What did he look like?" I asked him. He's tall, thin, dirty blonde hair, about mid-30s. Eli swore. The ranger took the phone from me, introduced himself, and told Eli they'd handle it from here. They filed an incident report, gave me a number to call for updates, and told me I could stay the night in the bunk cabin behind the station. I didn't sleep at all. That's Ryan, my cousin. He's not supposed to be there. He's got issues. All right, he uses. I just sat there trying to process that. He kept talking quickly, words tumbling over each other. I thought he was in rehab. The next morning, Eli drove up himself, pale and sickly looking, and apologized repeatedly, offered to pay for my gas, and even shed a tear or two. He said that his cousin had a history of psychotic breaks, and would sometimes disappear for weeks to get high in the woods, and that the lake house was apparently his usual hiding place. The police later confirmed this, finding Ryan 2 towns over naked again, wandering along the highway and mumbling nonsense, and he didn't even remember the night before. I should have been relieved, but I didn't. I still can't stand the sound of someone running barefoot on wood floors, because it brings me back to that moment. People always say they'd know when danger is coming. They imagine they'd fight or scream or have a plan. But I just froze and ran. Even now, when someone invites me somewhere secluded, even for something as innocuous as a weekend getaway, I still hesitate because I can still see those wet footprints leading down the hall, still hear his laughter behind me, and still feel the weight of that moment when I thought my car wouldn't start. Just how close I was to never leaving that house at all. I had volunteered at the Fall Festival, music our town lives for October. If you've ever been to Burlington in the fall, you know that everything smells like cider, fried dough, and damp leaves. Doors don't open themselves. Floors don't stay wet without reason. And sometimes what's waiting inside isn't a ghost, but something worse, someone real. Always check before you enter. And if something feels off, leave. Curiosity isn't worth being right. Since I was a teenager, I essentially ran power, passes, and problems. On the first Monday of the month, we set up on the town green. I had a clipboard, a neon vest, and too much coffee. By noon, children were running between booths. Music from the accordion busker was resonating across the lake, and cider steam was curling through the air. It was chaos wrapped in flannel, and I loved every moment of it. When I first saw him, I assumed he was just another tourist filming. Hoodie, ball cap, and phone angled upright. He stood close to the bandstand, lens pointed directly at me. When I asked him to move a few feet, he smiled, quietly, politely, and did. No big deal. However, he returned the following day. Big deal. However, he returned the following day. I was coiling an extension cord when I noticed his reflection in a metal sign. The camera was still pointing directly at me, and he didn't look away, just kept the phone up like I was part of the attraction. By Friday, it had become a pattern, and I would see him or someone who looked vaguely like him every day. I told my friend Jess, and she shrugged, probably just filming the fair. Yeah, I said, forcing a laugh. I suppose I'm really photogenic when I'm taping down cables. However, I began to notice that his lens followed me even when he wasn't in sight. We opened anyway, and people with umbrellas, dogs, and sweaters came. Then I saw the guy again near the kettle corn line. The camera dipped every time I looked at it, and it rose every time I turned away. I told Jess that she would bring it up with the park's director, but nobody likes to cause a scene over someone filming, so I continued working and pretended not to notice. Sunday night was closing, and the green looked like it was letting out a breath after a long week. Booths were half full, and the lights were still glowing under the mist. I was doing the last cleanup, holding a contractor bag in one hand and a trash grabber in the other. Upon noticing a phone on a bench near an oak tree, with a dark screen and a cracked corner, I initially assumed that someone had dropped it. However, when I picked it up, the screen automatically illuminated and displayed a picture of me unloading boxes from the supply van the previous day, taken from behind a tree. The lock screen scrolled through pictures of me sweeping near the cider booth, walking to my car, and even unlocking the side door of my apartment. At that moment, the surrounding environment became silent, and I turned the phone face down and headed directly to my car. They sent an officer to meet me by the gazebo, and she arrived quickly, a calm woman who appeared to have seen plenty worse. I handed her the phone through the car window, and even in the blue light from the screen, I saw a change in her expression as she pressed the power button. "I found a phone," I said, my voice trembling just enough to give me away. "There are pictures of me from all week. Remain in your car," she said, nodding. "Someone may return for it if they are tracking it." Using her flashlight, she scanned the trees as she made her way around the edge of the green. The cruiser rolled up again. 10 minutes went by. Then I caught her coming back, talking into the microphone that was attached to her vest. My window was the one she leaned toward. "Whoever owns this just pinged it with Find My iPhone," she stated. Signals moving along the tree line. I was frozen. Her response was indirect. "He's here. Secure your doors." Then she turned toward the maples, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. I could see the beam flicker between the trunks from where I sat. After catching something possibly fabric, it disappeared. She was joined by the second officer, who moved in broad circles. The inside of my window was foggy from my breath. Before I saw anything, I heard it. A jacket brushed quickly against bark. Then a low-lying figure darted between the trees, making its way to the parking lot. The officer yelled, "Police, stop." The person moved more into the shadows. They followed him into the forest as my fist clenched over the horn, ready to blare. But something inside of me told me to keep silent. I kept on waiting. The minutes flew by. The lights dimmed as a third cruiser pulled in, followed by a K9 unit. Voices calling distances and bursts of activity were visible to me. "Check the lot on the north edge." Then nothing. The first cop returned at last, his hair drenched from either mist or sweat, or possibly both. She said, "He's gone. Near the lot." The signal dropped. "Tonight, we'll patrol the area." She gave a card to me. "Give this number a call if you remember anything at all." Tonight's later, it wasn't the end of it, even though I had assumed it would be. The phone number was entered into the police's system. The following day, they informed me that they had discovered a man holding 3 phones and wearing a sweatshirt while strolling 3 blocks away from my residence. He was detained for violating probation and trespassing. They didn't check to see if he was alone. The following year, I continued to handle the festival. When people asked me why I would return, I was genuinely at a loss for words. You either hide or double down out of fear. I went with the latter. New lighting, camera towers, and a policy prohibiting volunteers from leaving unattended after dark were all implemented by the town. The orientation packs included printed safety cautions. Move in pairs if you're being filmed. Make an instant police call. I owned that portion. The behavior persisted, though. On my way to my car, I checked my mirrors. On my keychain, I have a tiny alarm clock. Every time I leave an event after dark, I make a phone call, even if it's just Jess rambling on the phone while half asleep, and I recall the officer's words when she first examined it. Evidence does not necessarily have a face. She was correct. Yes, you can catch someone, but you never truly get the sense that someone was observing you before you were aware of their presence. The fair returned the next October, larger than before. Once more, I was present. Vest, radio, same work, same smell of cider. When the busker performed his old accordion tune, I laughed. I disconnected cords and acted as though nothing was wrong. However, I could still feel it when the booths went dark on the final night. Someone might be there, according to the prickling at the base of the neck. It could be paranoia, or perhaps everyone simply remembers. In any case, I always check that oak seat to make sure it's empty during my last sweep, and I always bring someone with me when I walk back to my car, because it wasn't the pictures that were the most frightening aspect of that week. It was recognizing the ease with which attention can be converted into possession. He did not shout, he did not pursue, he did not talk, he did nothing except observe. Nowadays, whenever I see a phone raised in a public place, some part of me questions whether it's reoccurring. If you felt that discovering that fall evenings aren't as tranquil as they appear was the scariest part, hit the like button, subscribe, and tell me which story scared you the most. This way, you won't miss the next one. Additionally, you haven't watched this channel enough if you believe that working evenings are peaceful and quiet. Darkness doesn't care about working hours, so click now to watch for gruesome night shift horror stories. Thank you for observing. I'll see you in the next nightmare, so be careful and be vigilant.